Gemara. Today is Monday, Erev Rosh Chodesh, and Pedic. We're starting Pedic Chi. Yesh Mutaz Balayan. Tracer says that this is a summary. He says Gemara sometimes does it at the end of the whole Masechta. So intricate and so complex. They make a summary of the whole Masechta. A lot of it is obvious, but we're going to go through every single possibility here. And in fact, almost every possibility. That's what we're going to talk about. Some possibilities are missing. Yesh Mutaras Balayan. There are certain instances that the women are permitted to their husbands, but if the husband dies childless, they're forbidden to marry their brother-in-law. We'll soon see what they are. Then there are other cases where Mutaras they're permitted to marry their brother-in-law, but they're living in sin with their husbands. That's case number 2. Then you have case number 3, Mutaras Le'elu, the standard case where they're permitted to the husband and they're permitted to the brother-in-law. And then you have instances where Asuras Le'elu, they're forbidden to both, to their husband and to their brother-in-law. Now the Gemara will go through, Mishnah will go through each one and give examples. The Eilu Mutaradi following are permitted to their husbands. And the Asurim forbidden to their brother-in-law. For example, a Kohen headed, ordinary Kohen, should not have married a widow. Nothing wrong with the Kohen marrying a widow. Or if a Kohen headed married anybody, a Kohen is married. And then Mishlach the Kohen Gadol, his brother's Kohen Gadol. Now Kohen Gadol cannot marry a widow, but nor can a Kohen Gadol marry a woman who is not a psula. So he doesn't even have to be a widow. Any Kohen had married a woman that was not a widow or anything, just a regular woman. When he passes away, she's no longer a psula. And the Gemara will talk about that. Why we don't mention that case is so here's a case where it's permitted to the husband, forbidden to the brother-in-law. Or a cholol should not succeed. A Kohen was a cholol. His mother say was a divorcee married to a Kohen, so therefore he's a cholol. He's allowed to marry anybody. He married an ordinary Yiddish woman, which is allowed to. But the yeshle kosher, but he has a brother who's kosher, who's a regular Kohen. He's not a chol. His brother was born before, or he has a half brother, his brother from a different mother, and therefore his brother is a perfect Kohen. But now he cannot marry, because when a cholol marries a Yiddish woman, she becomes a chalala. And now in the future, even if her husband dies, she cannot marry a Kohen, so she's ushered to her brother-in-law. Says he went further, Yisro should not sabas Yisro. He was married to a Yiddish woman. The Yeshlach mamzer, but his brother's a mamzer, and permitted to her husband, forbidden to the brother. Or a mamzer should not mamzeres. A mamzer marries a mamzeres. They're permitted to each other, but the Yeshlach Yisro, his brother is an ordinary Yisro, so the brother-in-law is forbidden. Because that's an example of permitted to the husband, forbidden to the brother-in-law. Now the second case. What all of these cases are permitted to the husband and forbidden to the brother-in-law. Now, the following cases of Eilu permitted to the brother-in-law, but forbidden to their husbands. For example, a Kohen Gadol shekidish is almana. A Kohen Gadol married an almana, which is forbidden to him, but the brother is a Kohen Hedjit, so he can marry her. The Yeshua Kohen Hedjit. That's case number 1. Or a kosher, let's say a Kohen shenasa chalala. If a kosher married a chalala, a Kohen Hedjit married what do you call? A chalala, which is forbidden, right? But the yeshla chalal yisrael, but he has a brother who's a chalal, and she is permitted to the brother of the chalal. Third one is Yisrael. Yisrael marries mamzer, is forbidden. But the yeshla mamzer, they have to have a brother mamzer, permitted to the brother-in-law. Or a mamzer shenas bas Yisrael, a mamzer married a bas Yisrael is forbidden. But the yeshla Yisrael, but the brother is a regular Yisrael, so it's permitted. So these are all examples of mutaros leivim, they're permitted to the brother-in-law, but asur leivim, they're forbidden to the husband. Case number 3, the elu asuris leelu, the following are forbidden to both. If a Kohen Gadol shenasaman, a Kohen Gadol say marries a widow, but when he dies, his brother becomes a new Kohen Gadol, so his brother also cannot live with her. Forbidden to both. Or a Kohen Hedjit kosher shenasa chalala. If let's say a Kohen Hedjit married a chalala, it's forbidden to him, and the Yeshla kosher, and he has a brother, another Kohen, forbidden to him, forbidden to both. Yisrael should not say mamzeres. If Yisrael marries a mamzeres, forbidden to him, and his brother is also Yisrael, the Yeshla Yisrael. Or mamzer should not say bas Yisrael. If a mamzer married a bas Yisrael, which is forbidden, the Yeshla mamzer, his brother is also mamzer, forbidden both the husband and to the brother-in-law. These are asuris le'elu u'le'elu. What's an example permitted to both? The shar kol anashim mutaros lebalein u'livein. All other women are permitted to the husband and to the brother. Then we say, what about shnias? We learned before that there are certain aroyas that is only forbidden as midrabanan. For example, your mother's mother, your father's mother, or your son's daughter-in-law, or your daughter's daughter-in-law, or your great-granddaughter. These are all the asum midrabanan. They're called shnias. If If let's say it's us to the husband, but not us to the brother-in-law. It's no, let's say it's Reuben's mother's mother, but Shimon comes from a different mother, so it's half brothers. So Shimon is allowed to be a Yavam. So it's forbidden to the husband, forbidden to Reuben, but it's permitted to Shimon. Here's an example where it's forbidden to Reuben and permitted to Shimon. What about the other way around? Let's say it was Shimon's grandmother, not Reuben, even though the brothers don't have brothers, and Reuben married a totally legitimate, and then he dies. It's permitted to Reuben, but it's forbidden to Shimon. Is This is forbidden to the Yavam. The brother-in-law Shimon cannot marry her, but Mutar is Labal. They're full brothers, and Reuben was married to the grandmother. Then Shimon can't marry her either, so it's forbidden to Reuben, forbidden to Shimon. And then the law is, because they did something wrong here, and this is only by the Rabbanans. Ein lo ksuva, she forfeits her ksuva. The lepeida, she forfeits all of the income that comes from a nichsim meloik. She forfeits that. The lay mezainas, he doesn't have to provide her mezainas life and afterwards. The lay beloyas, nor the rotten clothes. And now Rashi, according to Rashi, not only she doesn't get a ksuva, an argument tonight, so not only but let's say she put in nichsit shem basel, which you said was fixed assets that, regardless of what the husband takes responsibility, he says $1,000. If the asset is worth $2,000 when they get divorced, it doesn't matter. He only gives her 1,000, and so on. And we learned before also that she has the right to say, "Give me my asset back, and I'll supplement the difference." However, Rashi holds in this case she forfeits all that as a penalty. Other Shem holds, why should she lose that? She just doesn't get any of the benefits, whatever the promises and the dividends, let's say, Nichsim Meloik that he did all the years, she doesn't get back. But now that she loses it altogether. And that's what Rashi chases. I have another shaying. I have lad kosher and the child is kosher, but these penalties are only by the Yisurim Rabbanon, not by the Yisurim of the Torah. Because Yisur of the Torah, all the arayas which have been in the Torah, we don't feel that we have to penalize. The Torah itself is enough of a warning. You shouldn't proceed to do it. It's the Rabbanon Avei that people take lightly, and therefore we made these strict punishments, that she loses the ksub and all that. But have lad kosher. The child itself is kosher because only an Yisur the Rabbanon here. The we curse them to divorce. Almana, but an almana to a kohen gadol, which is forbidden from the Torah, or a grusha, a chalutz, a kohen hedger, or a grusha, a kohen hedger, which is forbidden in the Torah. Now, truth of the matter, chalutz is not forbidden in the Torah. So many hold it's only written in the Gemara, because every time we mention grusha, we also mention chalutza. But chalutza really is drabanan, and therefore she should lose the ksubah. Others say no, because chalutza is so similar to grusha that the rabbis decide to leave it alone and not penalize. Mamzeres and a mamzeres, which is forbidden to Yisrael, and in the Sinner, we learned before that the nation of the Sinner, they're the one who masqueraded as if they lived, far away and everything else, and they were David Melech was Geiz Yeshua, and Moshe, we had an argument with that's Asam HaTorah to get married and fold on in Rabbanon. Bas Yisrael, when the Sinner and mamzer, or Yisha girl to when the Sinner and mamzer, yesh lehem ksuva. There we don't forfeit the ksuva. And that's one of the proofs that the Rishonim bring that it's actually Asam HaTorah, not like Rashi, because we just said Midrabanan, anything and Yisur Rabbanan, they forfeit the Ksubah, and Yisur the Raisa, they don't. And the sin is included in the Yisur the Raisa. And those who hold the Rabbanan say, but this is a very strict Rabbanan, we don't have to worry about. The Rabbanan doesn't have to penalize, because anyway, people are going to shy away from that. Says the Gemara, first of all, it says over here, if a Kohen Gadol, right in the beginning of the mission, it says over here, if a Kohen Hedget is married to Almana, the brother, the Kohen, Gadol cannot marry her. Why say married? Even say even just engaged. If the Kohen Hedget was engaged to an Almana, and then he passed away, the Kohen Gadol can't marry her because she's already an Almana. So why do you have to mention the fact that he got married? They want my Yidden telling us, so why have to mention he's married? Listen to Kiddush, they just got engaged. I'll tell you why, there's a difference. Because if they just got engaged, what's the problem? The problem is only that she's an Almana. And Almana there's a loisa for a Kohen Gadol to marry Almana. So then you would think, 1 second, maybe an asay is doicha loisa. Maybe the mitzvah yibum will push away the is of loisa. But that's why we talk about married, because if he married her, there's two problems for the Kohen Gadol. First of all, she's an Almana, which is a loisa. Plus, the Torah told him to marry a psula, and in fact, she's not a psula; she's a bu'ula. She's no longer a virgin. So there's an asay and a loisa, and that's why it's forbidden him to marry. Maybe that's why. Now, if you're going to say time of the nos, the reason why we mentioned marriage is because that's the only time the Kohen Gadol does not marry a sister-in-law because there's an assay and a loisus involved. Avol kiddush, if all they did was they got engaged, assay we'll push away the loisus. Well, kula pirkin assay everything, the entire Masechta Yevamos called kula pirkin, but the entire Masechta Yevamos is an assay and there's a loisus. You don't live with your brother-in-law, there's an assay yibum, or any other student we talk about over here that there's an assay. Every time we say there's an assay, there's a license, of incest and all that, and yet we say that assay does not push away the license. And we said the reason why the assay does not push the license is, in fact, if you remember, first we tried to bring a pasuk, but then we also brought the Gemara as Xered Rabbanan, because we are actually worried it's only the first bia that's a mitzvah. Afterward, they shouldn't have any more relations if there's an Easter involved, because every time you have relations, there's an Easter, and the mitzvah of Yibum is only the very first time, because afterwards it's supposed to become your wife, there's only the mitzvah of Yibum, and that's why the Rabbanan were worried that we're going to allow you won't just live with her one night, you continue living with her. But regardless, it makes no difference if there's only a loisase or a say loisase, the Kohen Gadol cannot marry her. So why does the Mishnah say he got married? He could have just as equally said he got engaged. So you might say, you know why? Because later on in the Mishnah, later on in the Mishnah it says in the Sefer, few cases down. A Kohen Gadol should know someone that the Kohen Gadol married a man. The Kohen Gadol married a man. And what happened there? And then he has a brother, a Kohen Hedget. That we said this is usher to both, usher to the husband and usher to the brother-in-law. Because once the Kohen Gadol lives with this woman, he turned her into Chalola, and the brother-in-law, the Kohen Hedget, cannot live with her either. There, it's only when did she become a Chalola, not when they got engaged, only when they got married. So there it had to say he got married. So therefore, once we talked about a Kohen Gadol marriage, we decided to talk about marriage in all instances. Kohen Gadol shnosa zamana dafka nosa, only they got married because the Shabbat Chalola. That's because they live in sin. She's a Chalola. Aval kiddush shariale. But if let's say they only got engaged, we moved to the brother and let's say Kohen Gadol got engaged to a woman, which he shouldn't have. But she's not a Chalola. So if he dies, the brother, the Kohen Hedget, can't marry her. Says so you're telling me the reason why it says in the very first case in the Mishnah marriage is because much later on in the Mishnah it talks about a case of Kohen Gadol and Mana must be talking about marriage. But 1 second, Mishum Sefer, because of the Sefer you change it around. Listen, Mishum Mitziasa. Why don't we learn it because of what about the middle case? The middle case was a Kohen Gadol Shenisa Esamana. We said a Kohen Gadol they actually had a case where Kohen Gadol got engaged to an Almana. And the Yeshle Ach Kohen Hedget had a brother, a Kohen Hedget, and there it says engaged to Almana, has a brother Kohen Hedget with the brother is all right, and the husband is not all right, but the brother is all right. It says in the Mishnah, like 3 lines above the white line. The Kohen Gadol that was Mekadosh and Almana. This is an example where the husband is usher, but has a Kohen Hedget where for the brother-in-law it is permitted. And so there, the middle case is talking about Dafka got engaged. So why does the first case say he got married? Because of the third case, the first case, which must be talking about marriage, when the Kohen Gadol turned into Chalola, it could only happen after marriage. Look at the second case where it talks about getting engaged. And the first case, you're talking about getting engaged as well. It's closer to the second case than the third case. Elul, right. Mishum Bas books. It's only because of the very next case. The Kabbalah, the very next case is a cholol shenasak sheda. It says a cholol who married an ordinary woman and has a brother, so therefore they're allowed to get they're allowed to get married. There's a case where the husband's allowed to get married, but it's also the brother-in-law. The cholol is allowed to marry a bas Yisrael and or a kosher woman, and the brother is a kohen, is what it called is a kohen hedget, and he's not allowed to marry her because she's now a chalola. And therefore, when does the cholol make this bas Yisrael or this other woman a chalola? Only after they've lived together. So because the second case had to be talking about they got married, so the first case of a Kohen Gadol and Mana, we talk about marriage, even though it was not necessary. Time with the nasa, the shav chalola, but kiddush shad is permitted. Says the Gemara, "Umay idia diktoni almana." Why stress that the problem is that a Kohen Gadol who married on Kohen Hedin married on Mana? The problem for the Kohen Gadol the brother is because she's not Mana. The problem is that she's not a psula. At least in psula, say the problem is that she has to be a psula and she's not. The chitema, if you're going to tell me, because this Tana is of opinion. We had a discussion in the Gemara before. When does a woman, let's say she marries Reuben, when does the dinim of Yevama take place? Only after Reuben died, then the dinim of Yevama said to take place, or as soon as she marries Reuben, there's a potential Yevama right then and there. So if you're going to learn that as soon as she married Reuben, it was a potentially Yevama, and the day she married Reuben, she was a psula, and therefore the mitzvah of Yevim for the brother who happened to be a Kohen Gadol was already chal at the time when she's a psula. So a psula is not a problem. The problem is only that he died, so it became, or she was an almana in the first place. When did it become a Yevama? Only as soon as she married Reuben, and at that juncture she was a psula. And therefore, the only problem here is because she's not money. So then follow that logic. If a cholol marries a bas Yisrael who's kosher, when they got married, she was kosher. So therefore, she could marry the brother-in-law who's an ordinary kohen. She became a cholol afterwards, but you're telling me that the mitzvah of Yibum starts the moment they got married. We don't say the sunnah shana pill, we look at the moment they got married. So I'll tell you why they talk about almana rather than babsula. Mishum say for here, definitely you'll have to agree with me. It's because of the later cases in the Mishnah. We want to tell us later in the Mishnah, Kohen Gadol we want to say a case where it's forbidden to the husband and to the brother-in-law if the Kohen Gadol married her as an almana. Yes, a Kohen Gadol, and he has a brother who now stepped in and became the Kohen Gadol, therefore it's forbidden to both. A Kohen Hedjed, or a Kohen Hedjed, or he has a brother. Dafka almana there is talking about. So now, or it has a brother Kohen Hedjed. Now, if he has a brother Kohen Hedjed, the Kohen Gadol married almana and he dies, the brother Kohen Hedjed cannot marry. Why? Because when the Kohen Gadol lived with that almana in sin, he turned her into chalala, and an ordinary Kohen cannot marry a chalala. Now over there, the Kohen Hedjed, there's no issue of the fact she's a bu'ula or psula. That doesn't matter. What does matter is whether she's halal or not. So therefore, since regarding the Kohen Hedjed, all that matters is that she's an almana, and therefore the Kohen Gadol lived in sin. Nothing to do with psula bu'ula. So therefore, in all cases of Kohen Gadol, we ignore the psula part. We only focus on the almana part. But psula doesn't matter. He's maskiv, Lord. Papa asked a question. Now, remember, we had a whole discussion. We had three opinions regarding Rabbi Yechanan's view about a mitzvah. Remember, by a mitzvah, we said no difference male or female, but the third generation is allowed to get married to the Jewish fold, but not the first and not the second. And we have one opinion that we go after the father. The father was a mitzvah rishon, and the mother was a mitzvah sheni. We say the child is considered a sheni because he looked after the father. Then you had Radim, he says you always look after the mother. If the mother was a mitzvah sheni and mitzvah sheni, and the father was a mitzvah sheni, we say the child in the third generation, you always look at the mother. And then we had the one that says you go after whichever was worse. Says that Papa, an interesting question. I'm going to ask, the Mishnah could have learned another case, another example which would fit into all four possibilities, whether permitted, forbidden, and it goes as follows. Master Papa, if Radimi was correct in his view of Rabbi Yechon, which is that a mitzvah sheni, the male was a sheni. Should not a mitzvah marry a female who was a rishona. But no sheni, we always look after the woman, and therefore the child is considered a sheni. Have a listener nami. Then the Mishnah could have said another example, not only Amon Kohen Gadol and Hedjed and all that. Another example where you can have all four possible scenarios. If a mitzvah sheni shenasa shtei mitzvahs, what happens if a mitzvah sheni married two wives? Achas rishona v'achas shneir. One wife was a rishona and one wife was a shneir. So now each one of them had a child, and they're half brothers. One brother, if you follow the mother, one brother will be considered a sheni, and one brother will be considered a shlishi, right? Depending who the mother is. Now we have an interesting scenario. This is like real mental gymnastics here. Now you had kids from both wives, so you have one child, and you had one child is a sheni and one child is a shneir. So let's say they married normally. So the shlishi married Israel, which is the law, and the sheni married the mitzvahs, which is the law. Yeah. And then they both died. Oh, one of them died. So mutaros lebalein. Here's a perfect example. If the mitzri, if the sheni died, the shlishi cannot marry his wife because she's a mitzvah. And if the shlishi died, he's married to Yisrael. It was permitted to him, but the sheni cannot marry because he's not only allowed to marry mitzvah. Is mutaros lebalein. Both of the women, they were permitted to their husbands, but they're also to their brother-in-law. The epuch, it was the other way around. If the sheni married the basasor when he shouldn't have in sin, and the shlishi married a mitzvah when they shouldn't have, but if either one of them dies, then it falls in the lap of the other one. That's permitted. Here's a case where it's forbidden to the husband, but permitted to the brother-in-law. The epuch. If we turn it around, they married, mutaros even man, the brothers are permitted. When the shlishi married the mitzvahs is allowed to marry the sheni, the brother-in-law, and vice versa. The mitzvah sheni who married a Yisrael and he dies, the shlishi is allowed to marry her because Yisrael. What's an example of mutaros le'elu le'elu? How can be mutar to both? For example, giyadis. Both of them are allowed to marry Giyadis. So here's an example where they're both all right. Asudas le'ele, what's forbidden to both of them? A case, for example, of an islandess is an islandess a Yisraelis, which is not really considered part of the fold, and therefore both of them shouldn't have married her because you can't have. And they're both married an islandess. There's no mitzvah of yibum by an islandess because she can never have children. Therefore, the Easter sister-in-law applies, and there's no mitzvah of yibum there because it's impossible to have children. Because it says the pasuk asher telek, only a woman that can give birth, and an islandess in essence can give birth. We don't care about if the reason is because some reason, like she's an older person or whatever, but an islandess can't. So the Gemara says you're right. Ton of a shy. You think the Mishnah exhausts every possibility? It just gives you examples. My shy. Whenever you say that rule, you have to find at least one other instance that was missed out. What else is missing out? Well, I'll tell you what's missing out. Shy, p'sua daka. It could have told you a case also by a p'sua daka, that if a p'sua daka marries, p'sua daka doesn't marry Yisraelis. If a p'sua daka crushed testicles and all that. So p'sua daka marries a Yisraelis, which is forbidden. She's also to her husband, but she's what do you call it? Is also to her husband, but mutter to the brother-in-law and so on. It goes through all the cases. Or let's say married an ordinary person, but the brother-in-law happens to be a p'sua daka. No, for example, a p'sua daka married. Let's start again. P'sua daka marries Yisraelis, forbidden to him, but the brother is a good guy, so he can. So he's mutter to the yavam, forbidden to the yavama. What happened to both p'sua dakas? Forbidden to the husband, forbidden to the brother-in-law. And what happened to the husband was all right, but the brother-in-law was the p'sua daka, permitted to the husband, forbidden to the brother-in-law. And so here you have all the cases that we have in the Mishnah. We have a p'sua daka as well. So Gemara says, and if she's Giyadis, no problem. Even though the both p'sua daka is permitted to both because he's not part of the call. So Gemara says, even p'sua daka, if that's what you're saying, lav shiur, it's not missing out. Why? The tunnel chayavi lavin. He gives examples of chayavi lavin, and this is also a lav. So you have to. This is it. It's included. So the Gemara, otu chayavi lavin. You're telling me because he gave you an example of a lav, therefore all lavin are included. So how come the Mishnah gives you two examples of lavin? If you're right that one lav carries it's just a paradigm and includes all the lavin, then why does the Mishnah tell us both lavin? Doesn't that prove that the Mishnah wants to exhaust every possibility, and it should have mentioned p'sua daka, it didn't, and that's why it shows the Mishnah didn't mention every possibility, not p'sua daka, not mitzvah sheni. What for example, it says kohen hedyet shenos almana, for kohen hedyet marries almana, and a chol shenos akshedi. You have two examples. A kohen hedyet married almana, and the brother-in-law is a kohen gadol. So that's one kind of a lav. A kohen gadol marrying almana, and the other one is if a kohen a cholo marries a ksheda and his brother's a regular kohen, he cannot. So there's one by a kohen gadol regarding almana, and one is a regular kohen hedyet regarding a chalola. Two different cases, two different lav. Says the Gemara, no. That's not considered, that's not redundant at all. There we needed Lashmina to teach you something novel, to teach you what Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, which is more of a comment. That is, and we'll talk about it later. Sorry, we'll talk tomorrow soon. Tomorrow. We're going to see there's a big argument when it says that a kohen is not allowed to marry a woman who's a halala and all that, or a zoyna. Is there an Isser on her as well, or the Isser is only on him? Or general question, a Bas Kohen, does she also have to make sure that she doesn't marry one of these people, or by her it doesn't matter if she marries anyone of that, as long as they're kosher? So the Gemara says, so Rabbi Yehuda said, there's no Isser for ksheres to marry psulim. So therefore, we needed that thing over there. Says the Gemara. What are you talking about? Look, Tony, it says in the Mishnah, Cholol shenasa ksheda. It says in the Mishnah, the Chol married a kosher person. The Mishnah does not spell out kosher means a Bas Yisrael, or kosher means like a Bas Kohen. Does it mean a Bas Yisrael, or does it mean even a Bas Kohen is allowed to marry a Chol? The Mishnah doesn't spell it out. Then it says the Yisrael shenasa Bas Yisrael. If a Yisrael marries a Bas Yisrael, v'yesh lo ach mamzer, and it has a brother, a mamzer. So we're talking about over here. What do you call it? So we see that the Mishnah continues to repeat. The Mishnah continues to repeat more than just one law. We talk about a kohen hedyet, a chol, then we talk about a mamzer, which is another law altogether. So you see that the Mishnah wants to highlight every possibility. Why doesn't it mention the case of mitzvah sheni, mitzvah shlishis? Why does it mention that? And you're telling me that Psudak is not mentioned because the Mishnah doesn't go into all the details. The Mishnah does go into all the details. And yet the Mishnah misses it out. So Gemara, Hanami loy mehed misni. This is not a repetition. The Ashmin, the Mishnah wants to teach you something. To teach you what? That lav she'ain shava b'kol. Over here, the case of a kohen is a lav which is limited only to a kohen. Only a kohen is not allowed to marry these halalah. When it comes to Yisrael, it doesn't matter. So Kamash Milan wants to teach you that lav hashava b'kol. Wants to teach you both possibilities. That there's an example by a lav hashava b'kol, mamzer. No one's allowed to marry a mamzer. And it wants to teach you when it comes to a kohen that only limited kohenim, that you have all these four possible scenarios. Says it says already Yisrael should know some mamzeres. If Yisrael marries a mamzeres, v'yeshle ach Yisrael, and he has a brother Yisrael. So we already have the example that if Yisrael marries a mamzer or has a brother Yisrael, and whatever elalav shmaminov, because the Mishnah goes out and goes through every single detail, doesn't only put one lav, and yet it misses out a few. It must be a ton of a shayr. The Mishnah gives you a number of examples and omits a number of examples. And there's nothing to be learned from the examples the Mishnah gives, just giving a few examples. And it missed out a few examples, missed out Sudaka, and it missed out the case of Mitzri. It doesn't prove one way or another. Ton of Vishai Shmamra is a proof that the Mishnah misses out. Gufa, now let's analyze what we just said before. That there's no Isa for a Kohenis, a Bas Kohen, to marry any of these people. Lema Messiah, lesbian proof. It says in the Mishnah, Chol Shenasak Sheda. It says in the Mishnah, a Chol married a kosher woman. That doesn't spell out in the Mishnah what's kosher woman mean. A kosher woman means a Bas Kohen. But he's a Chol, so it proves that a Bas Kohen can marry a Chol. Or Ksheda means a Bas Yisrael, but a Bas Kohen Taka should not marry. So we're going to assume now that Ksheda means even a Bas Kohen. Chol Shenasak Sheda, my love, Kehenis, you're talking about a Kehenis. And yet, Mike Sheda, she's kosher l'kohen, yet she's allowed to marry a chol. He's not allowed to. But she is allowed to. And why do we assume that? Because in Gemara Pesachim we learned what's considered a sort of mitzvah and everything else is if a bas kohen marries a kohen. In other words, a bas kohen should endeavor to marry a kohen. So if the Mishnah says ksheda, probably means the ultimate ksheda, which is a bas kohen marrying a kohen. And he's a chol, so we see that's not a problem. So no, that's no proof. Maybe Israelis. Maybe a Bas Kohen is not allowed to marry a Chol, but the Mishnah Sheda means a Bas Yisrael. Well, Mike Sheda, what do you mean Sheda? Sheda Kol, that she's a part of the Kol. So, Yesh kosher. It says over there regarding a Kohen Gadol, if he has a brother or a Kohen head, it's a Kohen Chol. So if he has a brother that's kosher, Nami, maybe he's talking about a Kohen who's also Chol. What does kosher mean? Kosher L'Kol. Miklau, that means who pasal l'kol. If the brother is kosher, you tell me kosher means only that part of the Jewish community. So the brother who's a chol is not kosher. So what, he's forbidden to the kol? No such thing. Elalav kohen. When it says that this chol has a brother of kosher, what does it mean? It means that his brother is a proper kohen. So when it says by the woman she's kosher, it probably means that she is a bas kohen. Well, who kohen? He kenes. So why do you make that assumption? Me the area. Why are they written next to each other? Hakadisa. Take everything in context. If the kohen is a cholo and he has a brother that's kosher, what are we trying to say? That he's not a cholo. What is he? A kohen hedyet. That he's an ordinary kohen. But when it comes to a woman, we say that when it says ksheda, it's a generic ksheda. She's the kosher l'kol. It could be only kosher l'kol, not a bas kohen. Maybe a bas kohen cannot marry a cholo. So we have no proof either way. So Rabbi Nachman has a question. Says the pasuk that a woman who's a zoyin and a chalola lo yikachu, a kohen should not take them. And then it says, and if a woman is divorced from her husband, lo yikachu, you should not take. That's twice lo yikachu. So Rabbi Nachman says lo yikachu melamed. That's twice. Sheisha muzhedes al yedei ish. It says that what that. So that it means to say is that she also has to be careful with who she marries. That's what it says twice. Lo yikoch. It goes on both. The Isser on the husband, the chol shouldn't marry a bas kohen. And the Isser on the bas kohen that she shouldn't marry a chol. So the Gemara, Malama to each but she has to be careful what kind of husband. He should be a zoyin and all that. Amar says, Rabbi, no. Kol heichadu hu muzer. He muzheres. So Rabbi says anything that he's forbidden, she's forbidden. Kol heichadu hu loy muzer. He loy mizdahara. and everything that she does that he does not have a lav, she does not have a lav either. So, for example, that Rav is saying you're right. That just like he is not allowed to marry a zoyne and a chalola, so too she is not allowed to marry a male who is a zoyne or a chalol. Says the Gemara, you're telling me that. So you're telling me that what do you call it? But a cholol is allowed to. So you're telling me that. But a Bas Yisrael is allowed to marry a chol. If a chol can marry a Bas Yisrael, anything that he's forbidden, she's forbidden, and anything he's permitted, she's permitted. So since a chol is allowed to marry a Bas Yisrael is allowed to marry a chol. A chol is not allowed to marry a Bas Kohen cannot marry a Kohen chol. That's what the Rebbe is trying to say. Says is this what we learn now. We learned from somewhere else. Rabbi Yehuda is the name of Rav. The name of Rabbi Shmuel. Ish or Yish. It says the pasuk, if a man or a woman to commit any sin, teaches us the following. When it comes to a positive mitzvah, we have a concept called mitzvahs asay shazman grama, time-bound mitzvah. A women are exempt. When it comes to a negative loisasa, there's no difference in man or woman, no difference whether it's time-bound or not time-bound. They're all equal. Hishra, because it says ish oy isha. Hishra hakasav isha liish l'chol einshin b'tei. They're equal when it comes to all the punishments of the Torah. So we already know that whatever aved is for a man is also for a woman as well. So the Gemara says, I would have thought no. I would have thought lav hashava b'kol. I would have thought that only applies to averis, that applies to all the yidden. But a lav she'ein shava b'kol, a lav, for example, which is only limited to a kohen, that if it wouldn't have said lo yikachu, I would have thought that women are potter. So the Rava says the reason why it says twice lo yikachu is to tell you there's an isa in plural on him and on her. They both have an isa. I would have thought no. Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? What about a tumah? The lav she'ein shava b'koil. For example, a yid, there's no issa for a yid to touch tamid. It's only emer lakainim. Only kainim have to be very careful about tumah, right? So it's a limited lav. The kasachmana b'nei Aaron, the lay b'nei Aaron. Time. The only reason why we know that that bas kain doesn't have to worry about tumah is because it says b'nei Aaron. He wouldn't have said that. I would have thought that women and men are equal, even though it's only limited to kohenim, even though it's a lav she'ein shava b'kol. Havmina nashim chayavus. My time, and why is that? Isn't it because Rabbi Yehuda Marav that tells you that they're exactly the same? So what do I need lo yikachu to tell me that just like a kohen, a cholol, is not allowed to marry a bas kohen, so to a bas kohen I'll marry a kohen cholol or a zoyna. It's from that pasuk from Hishra Hakasav Ishalish, even though it's a lav shein shavakol. No. In fact, we learn out the reason why we need a pasuk b'nei Aaron is because it says lo yikachu here. We see that even by a kohen, there's no difference between a man and a woman when it comes to the sermon of getting married. So therefore, I would have thought by tumah is the same thing. But from the hushva isha leish, that's only by lav she'ein shava b'kol. The only reason why we would have thought that a woman has to be worried about tumah is because we just said a minute ago that she has to worry about who she marries. From lo yikachu. That's why, not because of hushva isha leish. Or just quickly, Ikadami others say kicha itzachale. You know why we need kicha to tell you that a lav she'ein shava b'kol, women are just like men, even though you could have learned from Rabbi Yehuda as well. Because we would have thought fakert. Sagan would have thought ligma metuma. Once we know by tumah that it excludes women, I would have thought, oh, so we see that they don't have all the dinim of a kohen. Then when it comes to marriage, they also don't have all the dinim of a kohen. Even though we say that when it comes to lav, men and women are the same, but I would have thought when it comes to kahuna, there's a difference, not because of she'ein shava b'kol, but because we have a pasuk by tumah doesn't exist, and maybe marriage also. Kamash Malon comes to teach you. So and we'll continue tomorrow. Mitzvah. Okay, everyone have a good day.
Yep.